Hi, hello. My name is Freya. I'm a knitter and textile student living in Glasgow with my girlfriend Karina and my two cats Kiska and Floki. I don't think I've ever said their names before, but that's their names. Welcome back if you've been here before, and welcome if you're new. There's so many new people. I think I know why, but I'll get onto that in the end. Normally I jump right into the knitting because I'm afraid people aren't really interested in hearing about me. um, but I thought I would reintroduce myself. I will have timestamps so you can skip ahead just to the knitting if you don't want to hear a spiel about me. Before I say who I am, you can find me on Instagram as Freya Moar Textiles, and you can find me on Ravelry as Freya Moar. Yeah, so who am I? My name is Freya. I am 24, I think. I was born in England, grew up in Cumbria in the Lake District, and 6 years ago now I moved to Glasgow. When I got into Glasgow School of Art, I ended up doing only a year there doing jewellery and silversmithing before I got too ill to sort of continue the course. And since then I've basically just been trying to get better until last year, where I finally felt I was at a place where I could go back into education. So at 23 I jumped back into a college course, and this time finally I did textiles, which is so much better, so much, I say easier, but like it's not as stressful, so it's more pleasurable. Yeah, finally doing textiles. So my knitting story. My first knitting memory, I have, I must have been about 8, I think, somewhere around there anyway. I remember knitting a scarf for one of my primary school teachers. I'm sure it was like green and it was really skinny and probably really short, but I remember knitting that. And my granny was the person that taught me, I think. She always knitted for us as kids. I'd ask her for a cardigan or whatever, and I was so excited to see it being made, and then if I get it in the post, and it was just so magical to me. And she was a big sock knitter too. So one summer, she's from Orkney, and every summer we'd go up to Orkney. And one summer I must have had my heart set on learning how to knit socks because I thought it was crazy, like how you could make socks. Anyway, so I remember going through her wool cupboard, which she had lots of like odds and ends from the projects that she'd knitted us and everyone, and I picked out 2 balls. Don't even know if they're sock yarn, honestly no idea. And I must have persuaded her to teach me how to knit socks. I know I got her to cast on and cast off and fix mistakes. Yeah, and I know that I did knit most of it because I got very impatient and knitted them too small. Yeah, I do actually have them with me because I was thinking how I should probably talk about me, and then I thought, well, I've still got the first proper tangible thing that I really knit that I could wear that was, you know, the beginning of my journey really. So they're battered and bruised and they look they don't look the best. I did de-pill them this morning and they're full of holes and it's sort of felted, to me this feels like it doesn't feel like a sock yarn. It looks as if I've maybe done them on a 2.75 maybe, and they're really short, and I do think I made them too short in the foot as well, but I must have worn these lows because they look really worn and I had to depill them a lot. They definitely look worse for wear, but anyway, I thought that was really interesting. Yeah, 11-year-old me making scrappy socks. If you've watched me before, I knit a lot of scrappy socks now, not like this, but yeah, scrappy socks from the beginning. I think I then went into crochet because I could teach myself that, because I don't know why, I think crochet is easier to begin for beginners in the fibre crafts and arts. So I went into doing crochet things, and I remember I bought some books on crochet. I watched YouTube tutorials way back then as a kid, on crocheting hats and little things. Amigurumi, I did a bit of that too. And then another summer later on, maybe, this is complete guesses by the way, maybe 14, 15 this time, I knitted my second pair of socks, which I don't think they are sock yarn either, could be wrong, but my granny had loads of knitting patterns and she had lots of knitting magazines, and I remember one year looking through it, I saw a pair of socks and I thought, I want those, I'm gonna knit them. So I must have got her to cast on again and probably cast off and walk me through how to read the pattern, and how to fix mistakes and stuff. But they're just a blue pair of socks, a little bit longer than those ones, and they had a lace detail around the cuff. I don't know, why did I jump in and do that? I don't know, but the first one I messed it up completely, and the second one I got the hang of it. So one's messed up and one's alright. So that was my second pair of socks. Now after then, I don't really know what I did between then and sort of really getting into knitting. I know that I knit a couple of pair of socks, some like cowls, maybe a scarf, I crocheted a granny square blanket, but it was only about 3 years ago where I started knitting socks, gloves, yeah, what else? Just little things here and there. And I was a beginner, but maybe an adventurous beginner, but then I'd get annoyed when something went wrong and all of that. So yeah, maybe a year and a bit ago, I jumped right in and I got obsessed. And ever since then, I've been doing all of this. I've got everything around me, by the way, so it's all scattered everywhere. So socks, I started knitting jumpers, in fact I started crocheting big garments first, and then I thought it was time to finally get into knitting. I didn't really think, I thought, oh, knitting a jumper, that must take months and months and months. I thought that's so much work, so many hours, and I don't even know if I'd like the garment at the end of it. But after maybe the first 1, 2 or 3 things, I finally started getting the hang of it and making stuff that I actually would wear, that looked good. It didn't look homemade, it looked handmade, and I still wear them now. So that's kind of the gist of it. Yeah, that's kind of the gist of it up until now, and that has brought me up until today. So once again, I've written notes here in front of me because apparently I've knitted a lot. Yeah, so we'll just jump straight into it. So I can't really remember what I was saying on the last podcast. I do know, like, I looked at my notes and I saw like the projects that I'd spoken about, but I can't remember if I was like, oh, I want to finish stuff on my needles, I want to cast this on and cast this on. But anyway, this is what I've ended up doing. So I think I've spoken about this one in maybe two podcasts before, and I finally finished it. I put it down for a bit, I knitted things in between, but I finally finished it. It is The Earth and Air by James N. Watts, I think. It's been sat folded for a bit because I want to take nice pictures of me in it, and it's sort of like, oh, I really want to wear it, but at the same time I really want to get good pictures of me wearing it, so I can't wear it straight away. But this is it. Let me put it on. So The Earth and Air is a brioche jumper, two-colour brioche. One of the colours is a mohair and one is a solid DK iron weight. Can't really remember. I'll have all the details down below anyway. Now in the original, let me show you. In the original, this side is the outside. The side that has the solid colour as the front colour that stands out the most. But I knew going into it that I wanted to swap that round and have the mohair. The mohair is the more dominant colour, so that's what I did, and I'm so happy that I did. Really happy that I did. I just prefer how it looks. I saw one other person actually knit it like that too, and I just preferred that straight away when I saw that. So that kind of inspired me to make mine. So I knitted the size medium. I can't remember if I did a gauge swatch. Something tells me that I didn't, because I can't find it. So if I did, then I ripped it out to then make this. But I can't remember. So I jumped straight into the medium. I don't even know if this is the right gauge for it, but anyway, I digress. I started the medium. I knit the medium for the body, all following the pattern for the medium for the body. Then I picked up stitches for the size XL sleeve, because this seems to be a modification that I do for most of my jumpers. Maybe the ratio between how big my arms are to how big my waist and bust is bigger. Like, my arms are bigger than what the pattern assumes that, you know, my size is. So I always seem to modify jumpers to pick up more stitches for the arms, and I'm so happy that I did, because I know, looking at the pattern, that I wanted to, like, the pattern had like no ease sleeves, or at least that's what it looked like to me, and I knew that I wanted positive ease. I wanted it to be bigger than my actual measurements, so I'm really happy that I did that. I picked up the amount of stitches for the XL, and then can you see the decreases here? Yeah, kind of. And then I decreased a couple of times until I got the stitch count for the size small, which is perfect. I didn't particularly want the bell sleeve look, which is what would have happened if I carried on just knitting, you know, the same stitch count that I picked up for. I didn't really want that. I wanted it to just be slim and not flare out at the bottom, which this does. This is perfect, absolutely perfect. So so I finished it, but the body, because it's a bottom up jumper, and I struggle with those so much because I like to try things on as I go, and I like to keep trying it on loads and loads and get the right length that I want. but obviously with bottom up you can't really do that, it's more of a guessing game. And for some reason, so I think this is what happened, right? Like I was saying, a lot of the modifications that I make, like one of the consistent modifications that I make is making the arms bigger. And I think I I planned to knit this part the length that's stated in the pattern, and then knit the front and the back panels the length of the large or the extra large, which would have then made the overall length longer. And so here's the problem, is that I put this project down after I'd knitted the body before I split, and then I must have forgotten that my plan was to knit the back and the front panel longer. So long story short, it ended up being shorter than what I would have liked. But the good thing about brioche is that it's so bouncy, and it's, especially because this is larger needles for the thickness of yarn, it was easier for me to quite aggressively block it to the length that I wanted to. So that's what I did. I pretty aggressively blocked the body, more so than the arms, because I kind of got the arms the right dimensions and length when I knitted it, but I didn't for the body. So I'm sure the body would have come up to here. So I really did stretch it and get the length that I wanted to. Another thing that I did when I stretched it is that I stretched the back more than the front, because I hate it when the back rides up and then the front's longer. Like, another modification that I always make is doing short rows in the back, especially short rows in the back here. But I didn't know how to do that in brioche. I'm sure it must be possible, like everything's possible, but I didn't look into it. This is kind of my second brioche pattern, so I wasn't really confident about starting to do modifications like that. So I just blocked it out like that, and it worked. So I blocked it to the right dimensions, it worked, it's perfect. But if I do knit it again, I will do that modification that I wanted to do. So what else did I do on this? Well, I picked up for the I-cord edging for the neck. I used an 8mm needle for that, because every time that I pick up to do an I-cord edge, I do it like 4 times, because I think a lot of it is trial and error. So a lot of trial and error went into this neck, which I knew would happen, but I ended up having to use an 8mm to pick up for the neck. I picked up 2 stitches, and then I picked up an extra one, and then 2 stitches, and then picked up an extra one, all the way around. And that worked. That's perfect. It doesn't cinch in, it's not too loose, but it's loose enough not to constrict and not be able to get over my head, which my first couple of tries were too small. So yeah, don't think there's anything else to say apart from the fact that around the hem I ended up crocheting just slip stitches all the way around the cast on, because I don't know if this is, well, it must be a common thing for brioche, is the bottom flared out, the cast on edge flared out, like it wasn't, I just used the long tail cast on. I just used a long tail cast on, and it wasn't tight enough, so it just flared out, which I didn't like the look of. It was unstable. I knew that it would stretch out even more when I wore it. So I just did a slip stitch all the way around with a 9mm crochet hook. So it's not like cinched it in properly, it's just stabilized it but it's still got the stretch, so it's not like, but it's still got the stretch. It's not like cinched it in like this. So I would actually recommend doing that, and I would do that again. So that's just a little tip if you're gonna knit this. Yeah, that's it. Oh no, the yarn. Why do I always forget this? It's like the main thing. Like it's like the first thing I should talk about. So the yarn I got from Linda Hobby? No, Rito Hobby. I got the yarn from Rito Hobby, and I got the Easy Care Merino, which is this colour. It is colour 237. I think it's cognac. I don't know. I will have everything linked below, but it's the Mayflower. It's Mayflower Easy Care Merino. It is 100% merino wool, superwashed. 50 grams is 106 meters. And I'm sure that's, no, that must be an Aran, right? I think I said that was a DK last time, but maybe it's an Aran. I'm not sure. My mind's, yeah, I don't know. And for the mohair, again, it's a Mayflower, the kid silk this time. It's colour 3, and this one is 76% mohair and 24% silk. And I love the yarn. It was pretty affordable. Something about this pattern that's good also is that it doesn't use too much yardage for how big it is. So it does make it quite an affordable pattern to make. I would highly recommend this pattern. If it's your first brioche pattern, I think it's doable. Yeah, I definitely think it's doable. It's your first brioche pattern. And I used 165 grams of the merino, which is 345 meters, and I used 32 grams of the mohair, which is 250 meters, so not a lot at all, and it was super fun to make, and I would make it again. So on to my next one. My next one is a completely new cast on from what I didn't mention it at all in the last one. Surprise, surprise, this always happens. Completely new cast on. I wasn't planning it at all, but college has been stressful. I've not really gotten into the swing of this project. I've started some pretty intense therapy, which has just wiped out my brain completely. So I've not had much brain space to, like, this. Towards the end, I did memorize the row repeats, so it was pretty mindless at the end actually for me, but but I just couldn't even think about casting on something else that wasn't fully mindless. It wasn't happening. And I've wanted to knit this pattern for a while now, and so it's a Varpu, which Heather and Hops has made quite a few of, and every time I see it I'm like, oh, that looks like the perfect, simple, basic jumper. The light keeps going in and, like, I'm just using the sun, so if the lighting keeps changing, I'm really sorry, but there's not really much I can do about it, and I know that's super annoying, but anyway. So every time I saw it, I was like, that looks like the most simple, basic, everyday jumper, and I need it. Now, in the past, I've not been the one to use chunky needles at all. I've not been the one to do that, but recently, I've just jumped right into that kind of thing. Like, if you've watched my last one, I did a test knit, oh, the designer escapes me, but it's called the Big Ass Sweater, and that uses 12mm needles, and that's crazy to me. Like, the biggest needle that I had used was actually a 6.5, which was for this one. That's the biggest needle I've used to make a garment before then. So 12mm, that just blew my mind. And it went so fast, and because it's so like holy, I hardly used any yarn. So anyway, so the Varpu uses a 10mm needle. So it was just crazy to me. But I was just like, man, I need something that is fast, that is instant sort of, instant feeling that feeling when you finish a pattern. And so around the house, I always wear my ranunculuses, and those, I made mine using only one strand of mohair. So they're warm because they're long sleeve, and they're mohair, and mohair is a warm fibre for me anyway. Mohair is a warm fibre, even if it's held single and it's on larger needles. But it has been cold. It's been cold in the house, and I've just been needing a thicker, warmer. The lighting is so annoying, even for me. I've been needing a thicker jumper that's going to keep me warmer, which means I don't have to layer up particularly. Normally I sit on my sofa with my ranunculus on and my Birds of a Feather shawl by Andrew Mowry, which I love and I still wear every day. But I just needed that cozy, basic, everyday jumper that I wouldn't care if I ruined it, or do you know what I mean? Anyway, tangent, I made this. This was the jumper that I was wearing from the, I've got fibre on my face. This was the jumper that I was wearing at the beginning, and as you can see, it is the most basic, simple, everyday jumper that you could make. And this is it. I'm gonna put this back on again actually because it is a bit cold. So like I was saying, this is a Varpu. So for this one, I did a gauge swatch. I did a gauge swatch for this one, which is crazy. That's crazy for me, but I did it. And actually, my gauge came out bigger than the pattern. So even though I knew this, and I wanted an oversized sweater, and the sweater is oversized, like that is the style. So that's what I wanted. Even though I knew this, I still cast on for the second size. My bust is a 35.5 inch bust, and I'm sure the second size works out. The finished garment is a 56.5, and I thought, well, I want positive ease, like I want it to be oversized, so I cast that one on. And I got you knit the back panel first, and I got like this far down on the back, and I was holding it up to my shoulders, and it came like I mean, this already comes down really far, and it came down even further, and I was like, oh no, if I carry on with this, it's gonna be too big. This is gonna be too big. So I undid all of that, and I hate unraveling things. Oh, sorry, I need to yawn. I'm sorry. I got up early today. So I undid the back panel, which broke my heart, but I'm so glad that I did. For those couple of hours that I wasted, well, not wasted, it's never a waste because I like to learn from trial and error anyway, so I don't know what I'm complaining about. For those couple of hours that I spent knitting the first one, it taught me a lesson in the long run, so it's kind of invaluable anyway. So yeah, I cast on the first, So the first one I cast on for the second size, which is a size small if I remember correctly, and then my second cast on was the extra small, which is the smallest size, and that in the pattern that says that comes out as a 40-inch, maybe, yeah, 40-inch for the extra small. I must have got the measurement wrong for the small. I don't know what that was. You can look at the pattern. But so in the pattern it says for the gauge they had, the small comes out as a 40-inch, and I knew my gauge was bigger, so in the end mine came out as a 44-inch, which is perfect. That is what I wanted. Yeah, the size small would, in the pattern, size small is a 46.5. My god, I'm everywhere today. Anyway, so I knit the size extra small, but so modifications. It will come as no surprise that I modified the arms basically. So you knit the back panel to here, then you pick up here and knit the front panel, and then you join and work in the round for the body, and that's you. So I ended up knitting this depth for the size medium, medium, and then I ended up knitting the body to a 9.5-inch body, because I didn't want a crop jumper. I've gotten all of my jumpers have been cropped so far. I didn't want to crop that earthen air one either, because it's getting into winter and I want jumpers that are going to cover me properly and keep me warm. So I didn't crop this one. And so other modifications that I made, in the pattern there's no short rows, and I need short rows. I hate it when I hate it when necklines come down on the back. I like necklines to hug my neck and sit properly. So I added 3 sets of short rows along the back. So I went across 6 times for the short rows, which was perfect, I think, for this. And then I did 1 set of short rows for the back here, so that the back came down and wouldn't get lifted up, which is usually the case for jumpers, which really annoys me. So I did another set of short rows at the bottom, and that worked out perfectly. Another thing that I did was it's so hard to show, was I split the hem. So again, another thing I did to make sure the back was longer was I knit the rib on the front shorter and the rib on the back longer. And I love it. I love that look. I've never done a split hem before, but I love it. So I thought, perfect, let's just modify that, and I think it worked out really well. So that's sort of my modifications for the body, and I would definitely recommend adding in short rows. Like, it doesn't make sense for me not to have short rows. Like, is that just me? I just love short rows. So I picked up, okay, so onto the sleeves now, and the modifications that I did. Basically, I modified all of it. Well, not all of it, but you know what I mean. So for the sleeves, I picked up the stitch count for the size. Now I've written this down because there's nowhere I remember this. Oh, I don't know. Oh, yeah. Okay, I picked up the stitch count for the size. Okay. So there's a long story with this. First of all, I picked up the size, stitch count for the size extra large, I think. And I like to try on my jumpers as I go. And that ended up being like so much extra fabric here, which is not the look that I wanted. And I hate ripping back. So I only ripped back a little bit, and then I did like lots of decreases here, but it was still too much fabric. So I was like, right, I ripped it all back and I started again. And in the end, I picked up the stitch count for a size small. Now, I don't know why I didn't think of this before, but because my my stitch count was bigger, even if I picked up the stitches for the size small, it would come out a bigger circumference anyway. So I didn't take that into account, but yeah, I picked up the stitch count for the size small, and then I decreased evenly down the arm till I got the stitch count for the extra small, which worked out perfectly. Again, if I was to stay knitting for the size small, it would have been like a bell, like it would have flared out at the end, which is not what I wanted. I do love that look, but for this I wanted it to just fit my arm, and it's still oversized, like that's what I wanted, but it's not like, it doesn't like flare out like this, it's just slim to my arm, and that worked out perfectly. So that's what I did, that's my modifications. Now the yarn that I used, I remember the yarn that I used was actually, some of it was leftovers from that big ass sweater that I was talking about before, because I had 2 extra balls, and this doesn't call for much yarn, at least for the size that I knit it didn't, so I just ordered a couple more balls so that I could get a jumper out of it. And I hate having I can deal with having a little bit of leftovers, but having like 2 extra balls, I was like, no. So it was a perfect excuse to just buy a couple of extra more balls and knit a whole jumper out of it. So long story short, I used Drops brushed alpaca silk. This is 77% alpaca and 23% silk. It's 25 grams for 140 meters. I don't know what thickness that ends up being, but that's what it is. And for the pattern, it calls for, no, I can't remember. It calls for a thicker yarn than this anyway. So I ended up deciding to hold it double because I didn't want it to be wholly too loose of a gauge, because I didn't want that. I wanted a thicker jumper with that would keep me warm. So this colour is off-white, and then I got this colour, which is light grey, I think. I'll link it all below. Again in the Drops alpaca silk, and I held it double. Now this is a grey and this is an off-white, but holding it together, it's not really true to colour here, but holding it together it came out as a beige colour. I mean, this is a warm grey and this isn't off-white, but I don't know, it just surprised me that it came out as a beige colour. So anyway, that's the yarn that I used, and I love this yarn. If you take anything away from this video, try that yarn. I have been obsessed with mohair for like a year, but this yarn, it gives the same like vibe as mohair, but it's more pillowy and cushiony and squishy than mohair. So it's not that I'm bored of knitting with mohair. I don't think I'll ever be bored of knitting with mohair, but it's nice to knit with another fibre but still have the same look, which I love the look of, like the halo and yeah, the halo. I just love the look of that. So it's nice to try a different yarn, and I love alpaca. I've used alpaca fibre quite a lot before actually, and the drape that alpaca has is beautiful, and the feeling of alpaca is beautiful. This it's like butter, and it sort of melts into each other, and the stitches, it just becomes a proper squishy bit of fabric instead of having like proper stitch definition, which is good for some things, but for this it's just perfect. And holding those two together, it was perfect for the pattern as well. It's not too dense and stiff, but it's lighter and it's more drapey. Definitely knit this pattern, holding them two together. Definitely recommend. So I ended up using a total of 6 balls, well just under 6 balls. I did actually have 4 balls of each because I thought I would break into those, but I didn't. So I still have 2 balls left, one of each colour. But I ended up using just under 3 balls. I ended up using 72 grams of each colour. I can't do the maths of what that is overall, but that is 405 metres of each colour. So that's 810 metres for a whole jumper, which is pretty good. Really affordable, really fast. I knit this in 3 days, which is just exactly what I needed. The yarn wasn't expensive enough for me to worry about making it perfect, which just gave me the freedom to just knit and to just zone out and enjoy it. And yeah, it was just perfect for what I needed at the time. So that's my Varpu. I would recommend it. I'm not going to talk crazy more about that. So let's move on to the next one. So my next finished object is socks. Socks for me this time. I've not knitted my pair of socks. I've not knitted myself a pair of socks in a while. And if you saw my last episode, you'll have seen in my acquisitions at the end that my girlfriend randomly just decided to buy me some special yarn basically, and she decided to get me some Countess Ablaze yarn. These are the finished socks. I have actually got the ball band here. It's Countess Ablaze in the 75% blue face Leicester and 25% nylon fingering weight shock yarn, and it is in the colour Stage Fright. So in the skein, if you imagine this is a skein, it had a burst of colour here and a burst of colour here, and these end bits were white. And I kind of guessed in my last one that would create a spiral effect, and it did. So it created a spiral effect. It's kind of easier to see on the foot because I knitted a rib sock for myself. I wanted a ribbed pair of socks for myself for the longest time, but I thought, oh, that would take too long, it wouldn't be enjoyable, and I really want to enjoy knitting my socks because I do enjoy knitting socks so much. But I thought, right, special yarn, I want to make the perfect pair of socks for myself and put the yarn to good use. And I definitely did not regret the decision that I made with that. And this is a finished object. Now, it's not really picking it up, maybe you can see better here, but these lighter bits were actually bright white, and undyed white yarn, and I washed these in the washing. I've worn these once because I couldn't help myself. I wasn't waiting to show them on here. I just had to wear them straight away. But I've washed. I have only washed these once, and the colour did run. The colour's not become less vibrant on the colour bits, but it has turned the white into like a lilac colour, which I am so happy about. I think it looks so much better like this. Yeah, I'm really happy that that happened actually. So I knit these on a 2.5mm, 60 stitches for the leg. I did actually cast on using the long tail cast on a 3mm because I knew that I couldn't cast on more stitches here and then decrease for the ankle. I didn't want to do that and mess up the rib, so I made sure my cast on was really loose so that it wouldn't, you know, it would fit around that calf, which it does. I would definitely recommend casting on a larger needle for your socks. So yeah, I did that. I did a 16 repeat slip stitch gusset heel, and then I think, yeah, no, I did a 60 stitch foot as well. Now, so for all of my socks, like since the beginning, since my granny taught me how to knit socks, I've always used the heel flap and gusset heel, and I've never strayed away from that purely because I have a really high instep, and like heels such as like the afterthought heel, it doesn't give you a lot of extra fabric around the instep. So I'm like, even people with small insteps, I see them talk about how it just doesn't fit and they just don't wear the socks. So I've never done that because you can tailor the heel flap and gusset so much. Like if you knit this bit longer, you can pick up more stitches around so that this bit can get as wide or as small as what you want, which is just perfect. But the only downside of that is that it disrupts self-striping yarn. So because there's a larger stitch count around here, the stripes come out differently. So it's created this pooling here. Now for me, that doesn't bother me at all. I actually really like seeing how it knits up on a different circumference. Like and you can properly like see how beautiful the pops of colour are on those parts. But just to point out the fact that if you do a heel flap and gusset, it will change how the self-striping comes out. But like I said, that doesn't bother me at all. So that's my new pair of socks and I love them. Yeah, I will get on to more about socks in a little bit. In fact, no, let's just do that WIP first because it goes straight on. So that's all of my finished objects, and next into WIPs. So after these used, let me see, these only used 58 grams because I knit the leg reasonably small for me. Normally I knit them maybe like this much longer, but because it was rib and obviously I couldn't cast on a larger stitch amount here, I didn't want to knit them too long because I didn't want them to fall down. I wanted them to hug to my leg. So I didn't knit the leg too long, which meant I only used a bit of yarn. Now, when I weighed what was left to see if I could get another pair out, I had like 56 grams left. So I was like, well, that means that the original skein was like way over 100 grams. my girlfriend bought me another skein from Countess of Blaze in the same base, the same sock yarn but a different colour. And then I was like, right, so I weighed that one, and I'm pretty sure that one was like 113 grams. So if you buy from Countess of Blaze, then I mean it sold as 100 gram skein, and I got like 112 grams or something like that. So there you go. So I could knit another pair of socks basically, but I didn't want to knit exactly the same pair because what would be the point? I've got them here. So the whole time I was knitting those, I was like, this would look amazing with contrast heels, toes and cuffs. And the whole time I was thinking, because it's got those really bright like pops, I was thinking it needs like a really bright heels, toes and cuffs. And sock yarn is kind of an obsession for me, so I've sort of looked through every sock yarn that you can get, and I've seen a lot of people, and I've looked at like every colourway of the Coop Knits sock yarn, and I knew that they did a couple of like fluorescent highlighter colours, so I ended up getting Xenon, don't know if I'm saying that right, the Xenon colourway of Coop Knit sock yarn, which is this colour. It's like as crazy a colour as it is showing in the camera. It is a fluorescent pink, and it was just perfect. It was just a perfect match. So I got one ball of that, which is 50 grams of superwash merino, 75 superwash merino and 25% nylon. And this this is the sock. Again, a ribbed sock, but I did change quite a lot in this one. So obviously I did a contrast cuff, I just made it a little bit more interesting by, you know, breaking it up there. Contrast, cuff, heel flap and toe, but I used a 2.25 this time instead of a 2.5mm that I did for my other sock. And although those socks do fit, they don't like, they're not like tight to my foot, and I really wanted to see if I could get a ribbed sock. Because it's ribbed, it is so like elastic and it does, you know, sock in. I wanted to see if I could get that with these socks. So the first thing I did was I went down to a 2.25, which I should probably have knit those other ones in, because the tighter the gauge, the longer it will last, but I didn't. So I did that for these ones, and instead of a 60 stitch leg, I mean, look how tiny that looks. I have tried these on and they do fit perfectly. I did a 56 stitch leg, so it would be smaller anyway from using a smaller needle, but then it's even smaller because I took away 4 stitches, and that fits like really well. And I know that with knitting rib, it uses more yarn anyway, so I wouldn't necessarily knit a plain stockinette sock using a 2.25 with a 56 stitch count, because I think that would be too small. But anyway, it wasn't for this. I did a 17 row repeat for the heel because my instep is so large. I didn't want to lose any fabric in that area. And then I decreased to a 62 stitch for the foot. And so here's a funny story for these socks. Because I was changing so much, I decided to try on the sock as I go. So I knit cuff down socks. So I was trying it on as I went. And normally I knit like a 66 row foot. And I was trying it on and I was like, maybe it's because it was so tight to my foot, it properly fit in all the right places. And it was kind of telling me to knit the foot so much longer than what I have been knitting my feet as. So I kept on knitting, and I got to like 78 rows, which is like 12 rows more than what I would knit. Granted on a 2.5, and this is a 2.25, so it would be shorter anyway. And I was like, I can't knit any more than that, like that's crazy. So I did the toe and I tried them on and I was like, oh no, they're too short. And I was telling Karina this, and I was showing her me wearing them, and I was saying to her, should I rip back? Is it worth ripping back the whole toe to add like 2 or 3 more rows for the foot? And she was like, will you regret it if you don't? And I was like, yes. And she was like, you've got to rip back. So I ripped back the whole toe, and in the end I ended up knitting an 82 row foot, which is crazy. Like that's so many more. In my last 2.2 millimeter socks, I knit like a 71 row foot, and this ended up being an 82 row foot, and it fits perfectly. So now I'm thinking, I've been doing this completely wrong. I should be knitting my feet longer. So that's a lesson learned. So these socks have told me I need to be knitting my feet longer, which is really annoying because now whenever I wear any of my other socks, I can tell that actually the feet are too short. I'm not gonna rip all my toes out and put more rows on the feet of all of my socks. That's just not something that's happening. But for all of my socks going forward, I will be knitting the feet longer. So you learn, trial and error, you live and you learn. And that's something that I've learned. So I don't know, maybe that's a common thing, is everyone knitting their feet too short? I don't know. But that's what I've been doing. So anyway, that's enough of socks. I've spoken so long about socks. So moving on to my second WIP. I've got another WIP after this. I'm sure I've spoken about this in my last 2 podcasts, but I've not started it in those 2. I've just spoken about it. I have started to knit, finally started to knit my little sister's mohair jumper. Now it looks like nothing. It looks like nothing because this is just the body. I've not even sewn the shoulders together yet. I've just knit the body in the round, split for the back and the front. I've knit the back, I knit the front. I did a bit of a neck, I did a bit of a neck, like a neckline. I cast off, and I've not sewn up the shoulders yet, and I've not cast the sleeves on. But so that's as far as I've gotten. Now this yarn is an unidentified yarn that my mum got in a charity shop in Orkney. It looks like a mohair. It's on a cone. It was marked, like the charity shop put a label on it and it was marked as a mohair. But as I'm using it, I feel like it is an acrylic trying to look like a mohair. so it's not the nicest to work with, which is annoying, but so it's not been the nicest like feeling thing to work on, but I know how much that my little sister will like wearing this, so that's enough for me to want to knit on it. Yeah, I've not knitted faithfully on this purely because of that, but finally I'm speeding ahead and I've finally done the body, and now I just need to do the sleeves. So I'm making this up completely. I'm completely making this up, which I've not really done with knitting. I've not completely, I've not completely made it all up from the beginning. I did say in my last one that I was looking at the Over Easy pattern by Espastrico. That could be wrong, I'll link it anyway. I was looking at that pattern, but it just wasn't it. It wasn't, the stitch counts were too big, and the length was wrong, and the arm circumference was wrong. So I ended up using a 15mm knitting needle. I cast on 66 stitches for the body. I knit the body for 10 inches. I split for the front and the back and knit 7.5 inches, and that's as far as I've gotten. And I will pick up and knit, I think I'm going to pick up and knit, it's going to be a full length sleeve. I think I might decrease like two or four stitches. I do want to have like a flary loose sleeve, so I'm not going to decrease too much, but this is my attempt at vaguely making a Vivienne Westwood style jumper. I'll try and put a picture here if anybody knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, there's nothing really much to say about that because I'm not knitting, it's all from my head. I think I'm gonna knit down I think I'm gonna write down the instructions to it. Oh no, I've got fibre everywhere now. I think I'm gonna knit down all of my instructions and how I knit it on my Ravelry page for it. I don't know if anybody will be interested in knitting that, but if I ever want to knit another one, if she ever requests another one, or if I knit something similar and I want to remember what I've done, it's all going to be there, I think. That would be nice. I mean, I've got it all written down in my knitting book that I have next to me in my notebook, but it'd be pretty cool to put it out there if anybody wants to know. So that's what I'm doing for hers. Yeah, so my last WIP, my last WIP is as another Varpu. It is. I enjoyed this one so much, and here's my thinking now, here's my reasoning for knitting another one. So I've never knitted myself a cardigan. I've crocheted myself a couple of cardigans, and I did try and recreate the J.W. Anderson cardigan. That was like the first thing actually that I properly knitted a year and a half ago, maybe just under. But you just knit panels, you sew them together, and that's how it's constructed. But I've never knit like a seamless top down cardigan where you're knitting backwards and forth for the whole bulk of it. And I'd seen, I swear I'm not obsessed with her projects. I get a lot of inspiration from them because I really like the aesthetic that she creates. Anyway, I saw that Kat from Heather and Hops had modified the Varpu into a cardigan, and I was like, well, the pattern is really simple. Although I've not knitted a cardigan before, I can work out I could make sense of how to modify it into a cardigan basically. And I was like, well, I've wanted a cardigan for so long, and I feel like it's possible for me to knit a cardigan using this pattern. So I ordered yarn for it. I'll show you the yarn first actually. Now I ordered this from Purple Sheep Yarns, which I'm almost 100% sure is in the UK, and from my understanding, like, they only sell drops yarn. I could be wrong, but all of the yarn that I can see on there is only drops, and I'm sure that all of like the accessories and stuff is only drops as well. Normally I buy drops, or normally I buy most of my yarn from Wool Warehouse, and they carry like all the drops too. But I was looking at the colourways that they had, and a lot of the colours that I would have liked to knit with were out of stock on there. So I went onto their the Purple Sheep website, and they had a couple more in stock. And although they didn't have all of the colours that I wanted, I was able to pick some colours out that I thought would be interesting to knit with. So I chose, again, the Drops Alpaca Silk, and I'm pretty sure this is the colour Mauve. I love this colour. It's more muted than it's showing on camera. It's just a beautiful colour. Yeah, more muted in person than it's showing there. Again, this is 77% alpaca and 23% silk, and it's 25 grams for 140 meters. So that is one of them. And I wanted, although I love this one, this is perfect. Like, the drape that it has, it's not too it's not too like stiff, has a beautiful drape. I wanted to play about with another wool just to keep my interest up. So I chose another drops yarn, and it's Drops Melody. Melody. Now this yarn is made up of different fibres. So again, it is 71% alpaca, but it's 25% wool and 4% polyamide. Now, so I was looking at yarns obviously to use for this, and I was looking for yarns basically that was this yarn but a slightly different fibre makeup. And obviously I saw this one, and it's pretty much exactly the same but with wool instead of silk. For some reason, this is 25 for 140 meters, and this is 25 grams for 140 meters, and this is 50 grams for 140 meters. And I didn't see that it was 50 grams. I thought it was 25 grams. So this is actually bulkier. And when I got it, I was like, oh no, I probably could get away with knitting the whole thing in just one strand of this. But I was like, no, stick to the plan. So I'm holding these two together using a 10mm needle again, and actually the fabric is turning out nice. It is thicker than this one, but I'm not mad at that because obviously it's coming into winter, it's cold, and I want this to be a throw-on cardigan that's just gonna keep me warm. Like, this is just like gonna be a dressing gown for me basically. So I cast this on. I'm kind of embarrassed. I don't know why I get so embarrassed about sharing quite how much knitting I do, but but it's kind of my therapy. Yeah, I won't get too much into it, but basically basically it's the only like coping mechanism that I have at the moment. I'm not really able to do much apart from try and do as much college work as I feel able to do, and then just spend the rest of the time sort of like dissociating from reality and just knitting. It's like my only coping mechanism basically. So anyway, long story short, I knit a lot, and I cast this on yesterday, and I've already knitted the back panel. I've already knitted the 2 front panels, and I have now joined the back and the front together, and I am knitting backwards and forwards for the body. So I did a lot of knitting yesterday basically. So modifications, apart from the obvious modification that I've made this into a cardigan, modifications that I made again was that there's no like easy way to hold this up. But I knit the like the back panel and the front panel to just over 7 inches to get the wider arms. I forgot to say about the neckline of this. So I picked up less stitches here, which meant I could increase for more rounds, which meant the neckline would open up and also come down further, so it wouldn't like be like this up on my neck, which I prefer the look of. So I did the same again on this. I picked up less stitches like across for the front, which gave me more. Oh god, you can't see this at all. But I picked up less stitches here, which meant I could increase for more stitches, which would open up the neckline and bring it down a bit. And then although it's a modification, I don't want to give away the stitch counts or anything, but basically I did some maths, sort of drew out a little diagram thing and tried to wrap my head around it, and I have modified it obviously so that it's split down the front and I'm knitting backwards and forwards instead of in the round, to make a cardigan. So my plans for this is to knit it longer than this, so it's definitely not cropped. It's gonna be basically a cocoon for me, as my goal for this is for it to be the most practical, warm winter layer basically. Although I know it's going to look beautiful, aesthetics is not really what I'm going for here, which sounds bad. It's all practical, this one. Yeah, like I was saying, so it's a thicker fabric and it's a beautiful fabric. I love, if I'm holding 2 yarns together, I love holding 2 different colours together because of the mild effect that it gets, and it just gives it such more depth and more interest. So that's what it's come out here, and like up until now I would never have chosen these colours, never, especially the darker colour. That's just not a colour that I'd have gone with, but because I was pairing it with that beautiful lighter colour, I thought this could come out really nice, and actually I quite like it. I would not have liked this a couple of years ago, or even a couple of months ago probably, but yeah, I'm kind of loving it. I didn't want to go for a blue, I didn't want to go for a neutral because I just knit this in a neutral. And because other colours were sold out, this was kind of like my only option. But because I was sort of forced, not forced, but yeah, backed into a corner to choose this colour, yeah, I was made to use it, and I'm really happy. I'm really happy with the outcome. Does it make me look washed out? I don't know. Will I suit this colour? I don't know. I think I will, but yeah, the fabric is really nice. Like I was saying, it's thicker than this one, so it's going to be warmer. And but it's still got the drape. Yeah, hopefully you can see that it's still got the drape. Because obviously it's still alpaca. So again, I will pick up a larger stitch count around here. And for this one, actually, I'm going to pick up a larger stitch count, but I am going to decrease more. So, so instead of it being so baggy here, I'm hoping that it'll be a bit more fitted to keep in more warmth. So I will knit the body, do the ribbing, do the sleeves, and I will pick up for the neckline, and then I will pick up all the way down here, all the neckline, the body, the ribbing, and I will knit the button bands. At first I wanted to knit the button band as I went, but I was like, oh no, I don't want to think about doing a different thing at the beginning and end of each row. I just want to knit stockinette, or yeah, knit stockinette, and then just think about that at the end. I'm not a fan really of picking up stitches, so that was my thinking of I wanted to do it as I went, but I was like, no, it's worth trying to figure out picking up stitches at the end, and it'll be a good practice and lesson in doing that. So I'm not dreading it as much as what I thought I would. So buttons, okay. I find it, although I've only knit a couple of cardigans, but in the past I found it so difficult to think of buttons that will go with it. Like, there's so many options, and I feel like it is so make or break with button choices. So I really found it difficult. Yeah, I really found it difficult. But in the end, I went for again, I was looking, because I was buying I don't have any buttons, and I was buying the yarn from Purple Sheep Yarns. I decided to look at their buttons, and these were the ones that I chose. So these are pearlescent. I can't remember what the actual name of them are, but they're like, yeah, pearlescent buttons. I got 6, and let me get. So this would be the front, where it's like shiny and it makes different colours, and this would be the back, where it's like, you know, not that shiny. But so does that grow more than this? I want to use the back of the button. Oh, the lighting's gone weird now, I'm really sorry. Like, I'm thinking I want to use the back of the button. Do you know what I mean? Like, that seems like a better, I don't know, that seems like a better thing, a better option. So I think that's what I'm going to end up doing, because I really don't want to make it look tacky or like it could change the aesthetic even using like the front or back of those buttons. I think we'll get to that at the end. Like when I'm finished it all, I will make the decision and and hopefully I'll like the decision that I make. So that is everything. I can see that I've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes. I don't know how I've managed to do that. But thank you if you've gotten this far. Yeah, I had a lot to talk about. I've done a lot because it's basically all on really large needles. Yeah. I'm sort of I'm all of the jumpers that I want to knit after this aren't on large needles. So I feel like I'm taking a breath and I'm doing some mindless knitting and I'm getting that out of my system so that when I go into those the new projects that I want to make, that then will be a new refreshing thing for me to do, because I've been knitting on larger needles, and then I can take a breath from larger needles and go to smaller needles, and I will enjoy that more than if I forced myself to just knit those projects now. So yeah, that's my thought process of that. So I'm gonna finish that pair of socks, I'm gonna finish that cardigan, I'm gonna finish my little sister's jumper, and then I'll get onto those projects. So yeah, I just wanted to say a little thing at the end here, because I was seeing, like, I kept on getting notifications that I had a new subscriber, and the last time I looked at my subscriber count, there was a lot less than what there is now, and then I ended up watching Heather and Hop's new video, and it turned out that I'd won a giveaway, and obviously she put my name there, and I think she said that I had a podcast, and I don't know, I think you've come from there, which is amazing. Like, it's so cool. Yeah, so I want to give away. Oh my god, like, that means so much to me because of what the prompt was, and the prompt was tell me a knitting story, and I said a couple that my granny had told me as a kid, and I thought, well, if somebody found that interesting, then I was gonna ask my mum to ask my granny some more questions, because my granny's she's in her 90s now, and she's actually in hospital recovering from hip surgery because she fell and broke her hip, and my mum was saying how she's running out of things to talk about, she's running out of gossip basically, so I thought I'm gonna ask her like loads of questions. So I think I'm going to talk about, maybe if people find that interesting, I'm going to talk about that in my next podcast, because she grew up in Orkney on a farm, and I always remember her telling some interesting stories about that. So if anyone else is interested, I will talk about that in the next knitting podcast, and yeah, that should be really interesting for people if you're interested in that kind of stuff. So thank you for watching. Again, if you've got this far, you've made it through a lot. Again, lots of rambles, lots of stuff to talk about though, so I hope you're having a good day, week, month, and I hope it continues to get better for you. And I really know what to say at the end of this, apart from thank you so much for watching, and I hope you come back for more. It would mean a lot to me if you could like or subscribe. You don't have to, of course, you don't have to, or leave a comment. That's so cool that people take the time out of their day to do any of that stuff. Like I was saying, you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram, and I try to keep it up, posting with both. Not the best, but there we are. Yeah, have a nice day, and I hope everything's going well for you, and if it's not, I hope it's starting to look better soon, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.